Hi, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Maurice. I want to talk about the ATP Tour, the resumption of the tour. There was an interview by the ATP Tour chief. I'm not quite sure his name, but what he actually said was the most important thing for the ATP Tour is that they're going to start again by around late July, early August. What they want to do now is actually have the Toronto Masters and also the Cincinnati Masters, and then the US Open. And then they want to have a clay court season. What he said was the idea, yeah, the clay court season. And what they want to do with the clay court season is they want to have where it's going to be Madrid and Rome Masters 1,000, and then it's going to be the French Open. So we're looking at two Masters 1,000, the US Open, and then um, the French Open, and a clay court and a hard court season. He said the most important thing the ATP Tour chief said with all of this is that they start in August, or there's going to be a big mess up in the calendar. So that gives us almost 4 months. They say the coronavirus is past the peak. So I think there's a good chance of this. But my question is, on the current schedule, we have 1 week between the French Open and the US Open. So how would you get in Madrid and Rome in September when it's due to start September 20 and the US Open in September 13? Either they're going to have to push back maybe 3 or 4 weeks into October, the French Open, or start the US season earlier, perhaps the week of the 20th of July in Toronto, then the next week starting the week of the 27th of July in Cincinnati, and then have the US Open around the 10th to the 24th of August, push it up. Then the last week of August, have it off, and then have Madrid the first week of September, Rome the second week, and then stick with the French Open September 20 to October 4, and then move over to Asia and then the indoor season and end at the top eight. So that could be one thing. The other thing is you keep the US Open where it is, and then you're going to have the 2 weeks of the current French Open. You're going to have the first week, the week of the 20th of September, Madrid, the week of going up to the 4th, ending the 4th of October, Rome, and then the French Open won't be able to start till around 10th or 11th of October because they need a week off, and then end on October 24th or 25th, around then, whenever the exact date is. I say that it's better, if you can, to move the North American season to July 20, because it's no harm moving something to the middle of summer if they're ready to go then. But moving into colder sort of time, getting late October, I don't think that that's much of a good idea, but they'll probably do it if they can't get the tennis season ready before maybe around the 20th of July or at least the 27th or something like that. So that's the way it's looking right now. I say because we're past the peak of the coronavirus, we're going to be there. So regardless whether it's when they're starting, that's just the question. If you push the European clay court season later into October, or you start the North American Masters 1,000 at Toronto on the 20th of July, which way they're going to go. Another thing is, this is not their plan, but they could switch it and have the European clay court season in August and then push the North American season further into September. But that's not the plan right now. So it's going to be one of those first two options that I spoke about. Now I want to talk about what would happen with this situation, like with the players coming back. So you would have all the players would have been out for 5 months, and you got Toronto, Cincinnati to warm up, and then a week off to play your first Grand Slam. So the US Open, it would be perfect. Players are usually tired and run down. Oh, and then what I want to mention is there's no issue about moving forward there's no issue about moving forward like Toronto and Cincinnati into July, because usually they don't want to do that because they've had the clay court season, the French Open, Wimbledon. They want a 4 or 5 week break at that time, but this time they come in off 5 months off. So moving into the middle of summer, it's a summer sport anyway, that's a good move. But what I want to say is, regardless as if you push back the clay court season further into October or start around the 20th of July in Toronto, you've got a situation with the US Open where everybody's underdone. They haven't played for 5 weeks, right? So then, with the consideration of the 5 months, sorry, you've got to play 2 Masters 1000, and then now, at the end of playing 2 Masters 1000 in back-to-back weeks, what's going to happen? So now you came off 5 months off, but now you played 2 weeks in a row. So now you're not tired or exhausted or run down like you usually are at the US Open, but you're not underdone because you got Toronto and Cincinnati. So you're just right. You were too underdone before Toronto, and then now you're perfect in shape. And then if you're just a bit tired after playing 2 weeks, you get the week off. So now, instead of the US Open end of year Grand Slam when everyone's tired, it was like they were too fresh. They got the 2 Masters 1000. Everybody's back in shape. Nobody's tired. You could really see the best tennis here. And then the French Open and the clay court season after that, it'll be like they've had that whole US season and they're ready to produce their best at the clay court season. So you could maybe see like Toronto players underdone, Cincinnati, they're getting there, and US Open through Madrid, Rome, French Open, maybe people starting to get slightly tired but still there. So those 2 seasons, you're looking at a really good sort of situation, whereas the negative side for the quality will probably just be the first tournament, Toronto, perhaps Cincinnati, while they get it. But I want to talk about how, if this happens, how it's going to affect like the tournaments and who's going to benefit in this type of schedule. So what I would say about Novak Djokovic, I would say for him, we saw when he came back in 2008 and made that comeback and won Wimbledon, it took him till the middle of the year. And then all the time he had off in 2017 benefited him after being back for 4 to 6 months of tennis. But in the beginning, it didn't benefit him. So he took some time. So maybe taking 2 months to get back into it, then you've gone through the US Open, the French Open. So if it follows that, then I want to look at him 2019. He won the Australian Open, had just 6 weeks off, so nothing like this, and was bad in Miami and Indian Wells. He didn't play good tennis there because he wasn't ready yet. And then when it comes to like the clay court season, even by Monte Carlo in 2019, he still was playing bad. But by the time we got to Madrid, he'd got his matches in. So I fear with Djokovic that he may take a couple of months to get back into it. And the French Open, and then if it's during the French Open, he'll have to beat Nadal if he finally makes his level by then. But he's losing the US Open, and even if he gets there, he hasn't done very well at the US Open compared to Wimbledon or the Australian Open. So this could maybe cost Djokovic this schedule where he gets it sort of too late and doesn't win a Grand Slam out of those 2. And then him missing Wimbledon also hurts him because out of the next 3 Grand Slams that was meant to go on, Djokovic is better at Wimbledon than the US Open and French Open. For Federer, he's missing Wimbledon, his best chance, so it's a negative. Then the French Open, very hard for him to win in any conditions. And then once you lose fitness and you're that age at 39, to try to get back your fitness, it's going to take you longer at that age to build back up fitness. And then to try to do it in the US Open, 7 best-of-5 set matches for Federer on a slower court that he hasn't won. It would be then 12 years since 2008. And when he's trying to get back his fitness after so long, it's going to be hard for him. Now, the player that I see that this all could benefit would be Nadal. The reason being, like, if you look at when has Nadal played his best tennis, like 2010, he won 3 Grand Slams, was injured, so was coming back from timeout in 2009. Then 2013, he won 2 Grand Slams. He was out of the game in 2012 for sort of 6, 7 months. Then 2016 had a lot of time out of the game. 2017 he wins 2 Grand Slams, French Open and US Open. 2018 he's out from the US Open to Australian Open 2019, 4 months. Again wins 2 Grand Slams. So now another sort of 5 months coming back. So he gets to come back fresh, like the same as those situations. It'll help him more as he's getting older, and then play his best 2 Grand Slams. Clearly, with only one Australian Open and two Wimbledons, and those happened 2010 and before. But the US Open, he's won that 2 of the last 3 years, and his last 4 non-French Opens were at the US Open. He won it 2010, 13, 17, 19, and then with 2 of the last 3, it's clearly second best. So that's one of the two he'll be coming back to. The other's the French Open that he's won 12 times. So with him, that situation where he's always had a great year coming back and getting to play no Wimbledon, just his best 2 Grand Slams, clearly his best two, he could really benefit. And I think that obviously, no matter what, those would be his best 2 Grand Slams, but coming back fresh, when every time after he's had a year off, um, he's played great tennis. But when he's had that great year and had to do it again, it's not been as good. He's probably just won the French Open, and a couple of years he didn't win that. So I think for Nadal to come back fresh after all this time off and play his best 2 Grand Slams, his chance of winning them, they're much higher than they would be, and they would already be high. And then so I'm going to say if this happens, Nadal's going to get both the US Open and the French Open. That's my pick. I mean, I think because he'll be playing Madrid and Rome and the French Open, I think he'll play Toronto, skip Cincinnati, and play the US Open because he's only had one tournament on all those months. Maybe the first week of the US Open will be a bit tough, but he won't have to worry about his knees on the hard court. 5 months out, fresh, one tournament, Toronto. He'll be fresh, healthy, ready to go the whole US Open. And then that'll also make him fresh for the not playing Cincinnati. So he can play Madrid in Rome and then the French Open and then the week off and then play the French Open. So I just see Nadal's going to be fresh in his best position like he did all those years when he had a lot of time off. The next year played great. And to come back and play his best too, I think Nadal is going to get them both. I think Djokovic is going to need some time to get back. And even if he gets back, it'll be after the US Open, and he'll have to try to beat Nadal on clay, which will be difficult. And then Federer won't do it on clay. And then to come back, taking the time to build fitness at his age, and the US Open again, and same with Djokovic and the French Open are their worst 2 Grand Slams, and then Nadal's best two. So I just see Nadal winning both if this stays the way it is. If they don't come back this year, then Djokovic benefits because he won the Australian Open. The only Grand Slam played this year would have been Djokovic's best one, which he won, and it's already over. And then the next Grand Slam could be the Australian Open 2021. So we could potentially have where 2 Grand Slams in a row are going to be the Australian Open in back-to-back years. So then he could get up to 18 Grand Slams, one behind Nadal and two behind Federer, and all he did was win his best Grand Slam 2 years in a row, and the others didn't get played. So if that happens, Djokovic is a beneficiary. But if we have this time off and we go straight into Toronto, Cincinnati, US Open, then week off Madrid, Rome, week off French Open, then Nadal gets to be in his ideal situation, coming back off some time, getting some matches, and then getting right when he plays his best tennis anyway, playing his best 2 Grand Slams, the US Open and French Open, and he'll be a high probability to win both of them. So that's what I would say. For the younger generation, they took so much time to build that level. I just see it's gonna they're gonna have to start again, and they're gonna have to take some time. And again, if they get back there, it could be 2 or 3 months, and then those two Grand Slams are lost. So they're sort of looking at a strong showing not until the Australian Open. So this benefits Nadal if they're back at August. If not, it benefits Djokovic because he won the only Grand Slam, the Australian Open, and then gets the next Grand Slam another shot to make it two in a row. So it's just going to depend who's favoured, Nadal or Djokovic. If they're coming back for sort of this late July, August start, or if they're not playing the rest of the year. That's how I see it. But I see when I'm looking what's more likely to happen, the US looks like they're at their peak or past it, and the UK is around their peak, and Italy and Spain are opening up. France looks good. So I would say by the time we get to sort of late July, August, we should be ready to go. And in that case, Nadal benefits from this. I also want to talk about the insurance policy. Wimbledon, they're much less keen to play their Grand Slam as opposed to the others because they have an insurance policy where they pay £1 million British a year, and then they stand to get £100 million if they claim on insurance. So their situation is basically if Wimbledon has any issues at all, that they just want to cancel it and get the insurance money. Whereas the French Open and the US Open, they stand to lose a lot of money by not holding the tournament. So their stance is we'll change dates, we'll do whatever, we'll change venues, if we'll do whatever we can to have it on. So that's why you're much more likely to see the US Open and the French Open, and that situation favours Nadal, hurts Djokovic and Federer, which would have been the favourite at Wimbledon, and Nadal would have not been. So basically, Nadal doesn't get to play a Grand Slam. He probably wouldn't have won anyway. And Federer and Djokovic lose a big chance at Wimbledon and not playing. So if that happens again, it's going to favour Nadal. Um, and he doesn't need to worry about as far as the Grand Slam count. Djokovic and Federer, basically one of them guaranteed to add a Grand Slam. Either Djokovic gets one behind him, or Federer moves further out. He doesn't need to worry about them having that opportunity at Wimbledon because it's now cancelled. And the reason why it's cancelled is because of the insurance policy at Wimbledon, and they need to grow their grass 2 months before, so they want certainty. They can't get it with this. The only thing they could have done is asked if Cincinnati and Toronto would be cancelled and moved, play it in those weeks, mid-August, and then start growing their grass in mid-June and have the 2 months because they need 2 months of preparation. They need certainty. And if the lockdown is over and they can at least start building the grass by June, and then they were good enough to play by August, mid-August, it could have been okay. But September, the grass is going to be too wet. But they don't want to do that because they can just get the insurance money. So they're like, I'm not bothered in just being stressed out over this. I want certainty. And if not, I want to just cancel, and they can't get it. So they're just going to take the money and run. But whereas the French Open, they lose the most because they built a roof and they need to pay back a loan for the roof by having the tournament this year. So they're desperate. The US Open too. There's talk if the US Open can't be ready on time, they would even push it back and all the way to maybe December and move it to Indian Wells where the weather's good enough because the US is a big country. They can do that and have it warm later. They could even play it in Miami, perhaps if a venue, but they own the venue in Indian Wells, so they could play it in early December if there's no problems by now. And they're desperate; they're going to do whatever, but they would like to have it in sort of August, September if they can. But Wimbledon, they have to play a certain time, July or August, and they have to get the grass courts ready 2 months before, and there can't be a lockdown or issues on them building the grass. So that's what I think about this whole situation, the tour when we're coming back. I think we'll be back in July and August, and I think we'll have Toronto, Cincinnati, the US Open, then Madrid, Rome, and the French Open. Then we'll go to Asia, and then we'll go to Basel and the French indoors in Paris, and then we'll end at the top 8, and then we'll start back next year. And I think Nadal will win the French Open and the US Open under those conditions. And if that happens, he'll have 21 Grand Slams, Federer 20, and Djokovic will have 17 still. And then he'll be the favourite to get the Australian Open, but he's quite a few behind Nadal if all this happens. I'm not going to predict who's going to win the most, but I'll do that in another video, and I'll discuss the GOAT debate. So please subscribe, guys, and give me the thumbs up and all of this. And be back for my next video when I'm going to talk about the GOAT debate. Don't assume I'm going to choose Nadal because I said this situation favors him. It's because when he's out for a while, he has done well all those years, and he gets to come back to his best 2 Grand Slams, US Open and French Open. So those conditions, everything about it would suit him. But I said if we don't play this year, it suits Djokovic having 2 Australian Opens in a row and missing the other 3. So that's what I think about it. Please subscribe, guys, and have a great day, night, or wherever you are. Thanks. Bye.